Hello everyone, today is 27th of February, now it's 9:30 in the morning Moscow time. I'm Levan Gudadze and this is my first update for the day in which I will share all the main news that are making headlines in Russian media outlets and Russian language pages on different internet platforms. Later on today I will publish second news update on my Patreon and Boosty pages with additional news that Russian media is reporting about, and if you are looking for more news from Russia, more commentary, better understanding of the Russian or pro-Russian takes on certain major developments in regards to Russia or otherwise, I hope you will consider to join our communities on Patreon or the Boosty. Links are on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. That's been said, let's go through some news now, and I will start with reports about situation in Romania, by the way. And this is, I believe, breaking news, supposed to be breaking news anyways, worldwide, because yesterday, puppet regime of globalists, local puppet regime of globalists, arrested for several hours and then charged with six crimes, six alleged crimes that this person committed, and he was then released, but he was cancelled from prohibited to appear on TV, to be active on social media, and so on. Basically, they were silencing him, and this person is obviously calling Georgescu, person who won first tour of presidential elections that took place in November, last November, I believe, which was then annulled based on false narratives, because globalists and neolibs didn't like the results of the elections, and they were not happy that this person actually managed to gain such a popularity. But anyways, let's go through this news. Romanian presidential candidate calling Georgescu is being investigated by Prosecutor General's office on charges of six crimes, including incitement to unconstitutional actions. Earlier on Wednesday, some media outlets in Romania reported that Georgescu was taken to the prosecutor's office for questioning in a case of illegal financing of his election campaign last fall. The prosecutor from the Criminal Prosecutor's Department of the Prosecutor General's office at the Supreme Court of Cassation issued a decision to initiate crime proceedings against Colin Georgescu, who is accused of six crimes, among them incitement to actions against the constitutional order, dissemination of false information, as well as false statements concerning the sources of campaign finances, the Romanian Prosecutor General's office said in a statement. The charges also include creating or directing an organization of fascist, racist, or xenophobic nature, as well as promoting a cult of persons guilty of genocide and war crimes. By the way, all the allegations are major talking points, isn't it, of neolibs and the globalists whenever they are attacking people that they don't like. That's just classical way of attack from globalists and their neolibs. I don't think people are gonna buy any of it, right? Georgescu is currently on a 60-day parole, as far as I understand, and he is prohibited to leave country. He's also, as I said, prohibited to appear on TV, to be active on social media. Basically, this puppet regime of globalists in Romania is silencing him, and they are using state institutions for that. In the first round of presidential elections held on November 2024 last year, Georgescu won 22.94% of the votes thanks to an active campaign on TikTok. Second place went to Elena Lasconi with 19.8%, who supports a strengthening partnership with NATO and the United States. The Constitutional Court annulled the election results under the pretext that serious violations were revealed, which are allegedly confirmed by declassified documents of the Supreme Security Council, which is complete false, by the way. Investigative journalists already debunked all these false accusations in regards to that first tour of elections. And what is interesting, according to investigative journalists, one media outlet and one NGO was behind this campaign to annul, which will eventually become a basis or basement for to annul the election results. And both these organizations, newspaper and NGO, was financed by whom? You guessed it correctly, by USAID, by this instrument of the globalists, right? That is on its own now under investigation in US due to its criminal activity, right? So that's what is happening, by the way. Globalists are losing their minds. They really are out of control, and they are actually destroying Romania. They are provoking in Romania some local, internal civil unrest, because I don't think Romanian people will put up with this nonsense, and they know how to deal with oppressive regimes. I will remind you, dear friends, that it was Romanians that when they had enough, they actually executed their last dictator, Ceausescu, right on the streets, and many others, by the way, that were, active henchmen of the Ceausescu. So Romanian people definitely know how to fight for themselves, for their future, for their country, and who knows, maybe Romania is on a crossroads really, and they're on the edge of rebellion of the people. We will find out soon, but this is definitely despicable actions that this puppet regime, local puppet regime of globalists is doing. I mean, this is total disgrace, 100%. Anyways, let's continue with the news. TASS news agency is reporting that Russian armed forces liberated Orlovka and Pogrebki settlements in the Kursk salient area. I reported yesterday about significant progress of the Russian armed forces in this direction. More settlements actually are liberated, but Russian Defense Ministry for now confirms just progress in these two in area of these two settlements. I guess today or maybe tomorrow, Defense Ministry will share with public information about progress in other directions also, because at least 4 settlements were liberated in previous 24 to 48 hours, as I reported yesterday, and this is just in the Kursk salient, by the way. Also, we have Vzglyad newspapers report that Russian troops drove the Ukrainian armed forces out of Skudnaya settlement. Russian troops have dislodged units of the Ukrainian armed forces from the village of Skudnaya on the border of the Donetsk People's Republic and the Zaporozhye region. Let me show you on the map all these areas that I just spoke about. When it comes to Kursk salient, this is Pogrebki and Orlovka settlements that Russian Defense Ministry confirmed as liberated. Also, reports are coming in that Novaya Sorochina settlement is liberated and clearing operation is on the way there. Probably today, tomorrow, Russian Defense Ministry will confirm this news. And also settlement of Lebedivka, by the way. This one here is also under Russian control, according to a number of sources, and clearing operation is on the way. And when it comes to this another settlement on the border with between DPR and the Zaporozhye region, Skudnaya, this relatively tiny settlement is located. Let me find it here, by the way. That's it, by the way. This is a Skudnaya settlement. From here to administrative border with Zaporozhye region is about, like, I don't know, a few kilometers, and that's about it. This is a Skudnaya settlement that is under Russian control now. Anyways, let's continue, and we have reports about statements that US President Donald Trump made in regards to many different topics, and obviously US president does make headlines all around the world, almost on a daily basis, or waves of headlines actually. And in this particular case, for example, we have this report that Trump supported the idea of France and Britain to deploy peacekeepers in Ukraine. He did it once again few days ago, he also said this, and he did it yesterday too, during cabinet meeting, I believe. So US President Donald Trump said that Washington supports the plan of France and Great Britain to deploy their peacekeepers on the territory of Ukraine. We have a quote here: "I know that Great Britain and France have said they want to send so-called peacekeepers to Ukraine, and I think this is a good idea," he said in the presence of the journalists at his first cabinet meeting. Trump stressed that the United States will not assume the main obligations to ensure the security of Ukraine, but will assign this task to Europe. And you might ask why you are paying attention to this reporter. After all, he already said this very same stuff a couple of times. And to me personally, what is interesting to know, to understand what is the true intention of the Trump, because I'm quite sure at this point he is well informed that Moscow's principal position is that there should be no NATO troops into Ukraine. This is a principal position of Moscow that was stated by many high-ranking Russian officials, from Russian president to foreign minister and then many others. And I wonder why Trump is repeating this talking point that NATO peacekeepers, so-called peacekeepers, to be deployed into Ukraine. I don't know. Something is off there. And we will find out soon. Also, by the way, Trump, for whatever reason, stated that question of the deploying peacekeepers in Ukraine is the easiest one, which is also controversial statement, at least, right? Because yet again, troops to be deployed may not be that hard, right? But without Moscow's agreement, those troops will be considered as a legit target, and then we all know what will happen, isn't it? And I said in previous update that, in my personal opinion, Western ruling class, part of Western ruling class that prioritizes Europe and the European so-called elites, clearly are pushing now towards direct war between Europe and Russia. They are clearly preparing ground for that, and that's why, in my personal opinion, they are pushing this narrative of deployment of European troops under disguise of peacekeepers, because they know once some incident, they can easily provoke some clashes between Russian troops and these NATO troops, and then quickly escalate up to full-scale direct confrontation, right? And this way, Western or European elites might, they might think this way they will maintain some sort of relevance on geopolitical map, and maybe they think this way they will invoke fifth article of NATO, and they will keep US as involved in this proxy war against Russia as possible. I don't know what is going on in heads of European elites. I mean, they are psychopaths, so it's difficult to know what the heck is wrong with them, how their brains work, but they're clearly pushing for a further escalation with Russia. And why Trump is repeating talking points of these psychopaths from European elites, I don't know. What is going on there? If it was the first week of his presidency or the second week, okay, one may say he's not yet been briefed about many topics and he don't know, but now he knows, right? That Moscow is against deployment of NATO troops under whatever umbrella, under whatever disguise, right? So why he's pushing also this narrative, I don't know. This is dangerous, in my personal opinion. Meanwhile, by the way, French finance minister Eric Lombard is saying that Paris, Berlin, and London are prepared actually to send their troops to Ukraine. So some European countries are ready to send troops to Ukraine to secure a ceasefire, but US support will be required, said French finance minister Eric Lombard in an interview with the Bloomberg TV. So, I mean, they are not even hiding, They want US to be involved in this proxy war as much as possible. And they are actually working on the details now, when and how to send these troops. And I'm quite sure in classified part of these plans, they're already discussing ways of provocations that they will authorize to actually provoke confrontation between Russia and the Russian and NATO troops first, and then even full-scale conflict, which will, I guess, in mind of these psychopaths in European elites, will force US to get involved in this war against Russia in much higher scale than it is involved right now. But they are openly saying their plans, by the way. They are ready to send troops, and they want US to be involved also. We have a quote here: "We are starting a technical discussion." So they are working on the details now. There is a general agreement that to guarantee a ceasefire, it will be necessary to have European troops in Ukraine. UK, Germany, and France are already willing to do that, but other member states of European Union will contribute as well. He said those troops will arrive after a ceasefire in order to guarantee that the ceasefire is respected. But if we want the ceasefire to be respected, we need a US backup. And I mean that Americans agree to do that. The minister did not elaborate on what Washington could do to ensure that the ceasefire is respected. So, by the way, this is not about ceasefire. Russia also was very clear that there will be no ceasefire, by the way. Russia is all about achieving peace, long-lasting peace, but Russia is not interested in a ceasefire. And to achieve peace, root causes of this crisis have to be addressed. And if that is the case, then obviously new architecture of the security in Europe and in the world also must be discussed, and this new framework of the security or new architecture should be built and put in place. So it's a long process, right? It's a long process, and according to statements from Russian leadership, while these discussions will take place, Russian armed forces will continue special military operation. They will not stop. So there will be no ceasefire. So what these so-called elites in Europe or the US president is talking about? I don't know. Maybe they are just misleading the public in the West. Maybe that's what is happening. They are misleading public in the West, in Europe first of all, and in US also, that troops will be deployed in Ukraine just as peacekeepers, so that people will not be too concerned, right? And then once they will deploy these troops without any mandate of UN or anything, they will just say these are peacekeepers, but in reality they will be combatants, and Russia will see them as a legit target, obviously. And when some clashes will take place, very same so-called elites in Europe will start whining about, and they will start directly pushing for a full-scale war with Russia. With the US involvements, they will try their best to keep US in as much as possible. I see this threat. I don't know why other channels on alternative media don't talk about these risks, but it is clear, isn't it? This is not random stuff, that despite the principal position of Moscow on topic of NATO troops in Ukraine, European elites and the US leadership still continues to push this narrative. Why? Must be a reason behind it, isn't it? And in my understanding, this reason is that they want to, especially Europeans, by the way, they want to provoke direct war with Russia. And on very same topic, by the way, of so-called peacekeepers, European peacekeepers or NATO peacekeepers in Ukraine, Lavrov was asked once again yesterday while he was visiting Doha and conducting some negotiations with the local leadership in Qatar, obviously. And Lavrov said that Russia is not considering any options for deploying European peacekeepers in Ukraine. Period. That's it. There can be no talks about that. There is nothing to discuss there, right? This is a principal position of Moscow, and yesterday I reported that press spokesman of the Russian president also once again reiterated that Moscow's position have not changed, And for Moscow, it's absolutely unacceptable NATO troops to be deployed into Ukraine under whatever disguise. So you tell me, by the way, why Western so-called elites are still pushing for this narrative of deployment of NATO troops into Ukraine? Is it random stuff? Do they don't know Russian position? Of course they know Russian position, but they don't care. They are still pushing this narrative. Question is why? And I think because they want to further escalate this conflict, by the way, up to a level of direct conflict, direct clashes between Russian and NATO, or at least European members of the NATO, if US will, let's say, stay out of that conflict, at least for time being. Anyways, TASS news agency is also reporting that today in Istanbul, by the way, there will be a meeting between Russian delegation and the US delegation, and the Russian side once again most likely will inform US delegation about Russia's principal position on the topic of deployment of NATO troops in Ukraine, right? And this so-called Ukraine, a creation of the Bolsheviks, and although, by the way, main topic of discussion supposed to be rebuilding of their diplomatic missions of the two countries that are barely operating right now due to criminal actions of their Biden's administration. Russian and US diplomats will hold a meeting in Istanbul on February 27 to discuss issues related to operation of their two countries' embassies, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov announced. So yes, main topic is, as it was said after first meeting that took place in Riyadh between Russia-US delegations, first step towards or first attempt to normalize relationships or at least somewhat improve between US and Russia will be to rebuild their diplomatic missions of Russia in US and US in Russia that barely are operational right now, as I already said, due to criminal actions of the Biden's administration when they were deporting dozens and hundreds of even staff of Russian diplomatic missions in US, embassies, consulates, and so on. Russia had no option but to retaliate. US was also confiscating private property of the Russian Federation in US, and Russia had to retaliate in this regard also. A movement of the diplomats, US leadership during the Biden's administration did everything to make it almost impossible, free movement of the Russian diplomats in US, and Russia retaliated on that also, and therefore diplomatic missions barely breathing at this point, and this is not okay, of course. This is not normal when there is such situation between two major nuclear superpowers. So we don't even have ambassadors to each other's country right now, which is crazy, right? So this rebuilding of their diplomatic missions will be main topic of discussions today in Istanbul, but I'm quite sure some other topics will be discussed also, and most likely Russian delegation will say to their US colleagues once again that, don't mess around the topic of deployment of NATO troops, because, you're going to find out if you are, if you want to, continue on that path. We are against it. We are against any temporary ceasefire that will be used by our enemies to reinforce and reorganize Kyiv regime. So no temporary ceasefires will be in place. So if you are serious about the escalation, let's do it. Let's address root causes. Let's work on serious matters. But if you are going to continue with this nonsense, then you will find out. That's what should be said to US delegations, and they will then inform their bosses in Washington. Because it's not normal, by the way, when Trump is repeating these talking points of European so-called leaders that clearly are provocative, and their attempt to derail the escalation. And before I continue, dear friends, let me notice, if I may, that this small independent media project from Russia is completely subscriber funded. And if you like my work, if you like my channels, if you think I deserve to be in this field of news and political commentary, please consider to support with donations to support my work, with donations through PayPal or Boosty platforms. Or if you don't have PayPal or don't like Boosty, you can subscribe to my Patreon page, for example, and become a Patreon for this project. All the links, by the way, all the links are on this video in description box and in the pinned comment, including crypto address of the crypto wallet. And when it comes to Patreon, I will make a little announcement that later on today I will publish not just a second news update on Patreon, but also first episode of the Heritage program. Hopefully our community on Patreon and Boosty will find it interesting. I hope so. And on my part, dear friends, I'm really trying to make sure that my pages on Patreon and Boosty are interesting, and I will continue to do so. So yes, that's being said, let's go ahead with some more news. And we have this report from RIA Novosti that Trump yesterday during his first cabinet meeting also spoke about Ukraine's chances to join NATO. He was asked about it. I don't know why these so-called journalists in presidential pool in US are time after time asking these stupid questions and forcing Trump or other leaders to answer this. But Trump was asked about Ukraine's chances to join NATO, and he said that they should forget about it. Ukraine should forget about NATO. US President Donald Trump said that Ukraine can forget about her prospect of membership in NATO as a part of future agreement to resolve the conflict in Ukraine. Then quote here, I can say that you can forget about NATO. I think this is probably the reason why it all started, he told reporters at the White House when asked about future concessions that Ukraine will have to make. And he is absolutely correct, by the way. Obviously, NATO's deployment of NATO military infrastructure closer and closer to Russian borders, including inside Ukraine, by the way, was a big issue, right? And did play a crucial role to provoke current confrontation. Although obviously 2014 coup d'etat that was led also by US in Kiev did play a crucial main role even, right? So it seems like Trump understands that Russia was provoked, right? And the NATO topic should be closed. And if he understands this, why is he supporting the idea of deployment of NATO troops into Ukraine? Because deployment disguised as a peacekeepers or whatever, aliens, who cares? But it's a NATO troops, right? And deployment of some 20, 30, as it discussed in the Western media, or more troops of the NATO will of course bring military infrastructure with it, right? Logistical and other. And why would Moscow ever agree on that? You can call them a peacekeepers, you can call them whatever you want. You know, guardians of the galaxy, who cares? But in reality, this is a NATO troops of the hostile organization, hostile states that are led by hostile people towards Russia. And if you understand that NATO is an issue, one of the issues, then why you are repeating talking points of European elites, and why you are saying that, yeah, it's okay if France and the UK and Germany will deploy their troops into Ukraine. It's not okay, man. So do you see, dear friends, I mean, Trump is, maybe he is not even realizing that he is kind of contradicting himself, you know? 1 minute he can say one statement that the majority may understand and agree or disagree. It does not matter. In another minute, he can say something that will contradict his previous statement. And this news itself is a demonstration of that. He himself is saying that, well, NATO is an issue, right? And we should forget, or Ukraine should forget about NATO. And at the same time, on the very same meeting, cabinet meeting, he said that he is all okay NATO troops to be deployed in Ukraine. So what the hell, man? This is nonsense, right? This is nonsense, man. More serious approach is needed because at this point, I'm quite sure many people worldwide are confused big time when they hear all these, statements after statements after statements that quite often really contradict each other. Statements from the U.S. leadership. But anyways, by the way, this is not all. RT is reporting that Marco Rubio, head of State Department of US, was once again asked about nuclear Ukraine, which is, yet again, dear friends, you know my take on the situation on Ukrainian crisis. I said a very, very long time ago that I think Western ruling class plans as a next phase of escalation with Russia, transformation of, as one of the, let's say, main phase, one of the ways this next main phase of escalation with Russia will go ahead, as a transformation of terrorist regime of Zelensky into a nuclear-armed terrorist regime, right? And there was dozens and dozens of articles in the West about this topic, how Ukraine may become nuclear and what kind of capabilities Kyiv regime has in this direction and so on. And constantly high-ranking officials are talking about this topic, still until now. And question is why? Why? If nothing is pre-planned, if Western ruling class has no plans to transform Kyiv regime into a nuclear armed regime, why this topic is circulating in media for so long? And why Marco Rubio was asked about it? Is it around, all this stuff is random stuff? I don't think so. This is a part of a larger, bigger game, right? So nuclear-armed Ukraine, not a serious offer, Rubio said. At least Rubio reacted adequately, by the way, on this topic. So U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has dismissed calls by Ukrainian leader Vladimir Zelensky for a nuclear capability, labeling the idea unrealistic. He emphasized that Washington is seeking global nuclear reduction. Zelensky has suggested for years that Kyiv should pursue nuclear armament, asserting that Ukraine previously possessed nuclear weapons and surrendered them under pressure from the US and UK and Russia. More recently, he has framed nuclear arms as an alternative to a NATO membership. And then we have a quote, and dear friends, you all know that this is obvious. Ukraine never had no nuclear weapons. It was Soviet nuclear weapons. Russia is a only legal successor of the Soviet Union. That's why Russia is a permanent member of the UN Security Council, as Soviet Union was previously, right? And all the Soviet nuclear weapons was Russian nuclear weapons from very first minute, from very first second that Soviet Union ceased to exist. So Ukraine never had no nuclear weapons, never believe anybody that tells you otherwise, man. They are just lying, intentionally or otherwise, but they are lying, right? But we have a quote here from Marco Rubio. I don't think anyone would think that that's a serious offer on their part, nor do I think equipping them with nuclear weapons is a solution to the problem. Rubio said in an interview with Breitbart News on Tuesday, we want less nuclear-armed countries, not more. And earlier, U.S. Special Envoy for Ukraine, Kat Kellogg, assessed that the likelihood of Ukraine acquiring nuclear weapons as somewhere between slim and none, noting that Zelensky's proposal defies common sense. So yet again, dear friends, I mean, constantly, why this topic being kept relevant in the West by Western so-called media, by Western so-called politicians? What is going on? Is it a random stuff? Of course not. Of course not. And I'm 100% convinced, by the way, that certain groups in Europe, most likely in US, in deep state or whatever, are working on the idea of transforming Kyiv regime, this terrorist regime in Kyiv, into a nuclear-armed terrorist regime. And Moscow also sees, as far as I understand, these risks. And high-ranking Russian officials on several occasions stated that in no circumstances Moscow will allow Kyiv regime to become nuclear. So this is one direction, by the way, through which European elites or Western elites might escalate with Russia on their next unprecedented scale, attempt to transform Kyiv regime into a nuclear-armed regime. And the other direction is provoking direct conflict with Russia. And in both directions, clearly work is done by Western elites, European elites, right? Because on one hand, topic of nuclear Ukraine is, for whatever reasons, kept alive. And high-ranking officials are constantly forced to talk about this topic. And on the other hand, European elites still are pushing this nonsensical narrative of deploying NATO troops as a sort of peacekeepers into Ukraine, which will which eventually can definitely become a big issue and even provoke direct confrontation between Russia and at least number of NATO member states. So we should keep in mind these topics, by the way, and these attempts of the Western world class to further escalate. Tass news agency, meanwhile, is reporting that Zelensky confirmed that he will visit U.S. Tomorrow on 28th of February. So Vladimir Zelensky confirmed that preparations are underway for his visit to United States and said that February 28th was the working date for his meeting with the U.S. President Donald Trump. Then we have a quote here about the visit. The visit was proposed to us, but I want to get information about the format and their timing. The offices are working on it. There is a working date, as the US president said on Friday. I have an important question. I really want to visit, Zelensky told local journalists. He also confirmed that he expects to travel to the UK from US. So obviously he will travel to UK because now we are observing this shift of Kyiv regime from US towards UK, and most likely London will play more and more important role in European affairs in general and in affairs of Ukraine. At least London will try to do so. And during this visit, by the way, on Friday, as Trump said earlier, agreement on rare earth materials, minerals, will be signed probably by Trump and Zelensky, which is also one more strange step that Trump is making, because Zelensky is illegit president. He's not president, by the way. I know State Rada in Ukraine was forced to vote on some crazy law that allegedly, gives Zelensky some legitimacy or something. This is nonsense, by the way. State Rada has no rights to do so. Only people can give a presidential mandate to person, right? Not the Rada. It's not Ukraine is not parliamentary republic, by the way. It's a presidential republic, right? So presidents are elected in general elections. In parliamentary republic, for example, Georgia, after last parliamentary elections, finally transformed into a parliamentary republic, and therefore parliament is choosing president, electing president, right? But in presidential republic, it's a people. It's a general election after which president is elected. So therefore, some really, really strange developments are taking place in this direction. Also, why Trump is doing this, I have no idea. Some people might argue that Trump was misled, and once this agreement will be in place, European elites will find it easier to keep US more involved in this proxy war against Russia, because they will fool Trump that it's about $1 trillion. It's not about Ukraine or democracy or stuff. It's your trillion. So you want to keep it or leave it. If you want to keep it, then give us more money, give us more weapons, and so on. That's might be the game plan here, but I think Trump and the people around him probably will figure this out. And I don't know if they are serious about de-escalating with Russia. They will continue de-escalate, to take some steps towards de-escalation. But if they were not serious, then after this agreement is signed between Zelensky and Trump about rare earth, which according to Trump's estimate might be worth of 1 trillion even, not 500 billion, but 1 trillion. Okay. Then once this agreement is signed, we might see 180 degrees turnaround from U.S. administration and change of rhetoric, and maybe U.S. will start acting in the same way that it was acting during the Biden's administration. Let's see, brother. Meanwhile, Zelensky, because Zelensky himself was, saying some quite stuff last few days that he would not pay back to US even $1 or 10 cents or something. Some people in White House are still confused about all this ordeal with Zelensky and this rare earth materials, and we have reports that White House actually questions how relevant Zelensky's visit to US is, and if that visit should take place at all. So administration of the President Donald Trump doubts the expediency of inviting Vladimir Zelensky to a meeting with the American leader due to unavailability of an agreement on mineral resources between Washington and Kiev, White House officials told Reuters. Well, we will find out. Zelensky already said that he is not going to pay back nothing to US. He is not recognizing any debt of Kiev regime towards United States. He and other officials, so-called officials in Ukraine, are saying that under new deal on rare earth, there is no mention about 500 billion that US has to receive. It's just about creation of a fund of reconstruction of Ukraine, in which some money, some proceeds from rare earth and other resources will be transferred. We will find out. Yet again, quite confusing situation around this topic, especially if you take into account that Zelensky is nobody, for God's sake. He is illegit, right? Anything he signs will have no legal means. So why Trump is playing in this nonsensical game, I don't know. It's strange, to say the least. So Vzгляд newspaper, and I would not be surprised at all if there will be no visit of Zelensky to US at all. White House today might said, you know what, Kiev regime is playing some games here. We have these terms, they are disagree, so therefore we have nothing to talk about. Maybe that will happen, or who knows, maybe Zelensky will still visit US. I don't really care, to be honest. Vzгляд newspaper, because it does not make no sense, but as I already said, Zelensky is illegit, and no matter what he's signing up for, it has no legitimacy. So Vzгляд newspaper is also reporting that, as I already said, dear friends, Russia has principal position in regards to this temporary ceasefires. It's completely unacceptable for Russia, and Lavrov, foreign minister of Russian Federation, once again confirmed that the conflict in Ukraine will not stop at the contact line. So Ukrainian settlement along the line of contact is impossible since the Russian borders are enshrined into the constitution, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said. Some people say, let's leave the line of contact. This is the Russian one and this is the Ukrainian one. First of all, this will not happen. We have a constitution based on the will of the people. Thus quoted the minister as saying, according to Lavrov, the remaining Ukrainian territories should be free from racist laws also and the terrorist regime. But I will add from myself that the rest of the territory should be liberated from this terrorist regime for sure. And Western Ukraine, you know what? I don't care about Western Ukraine, but the rest of the territory should be free of all sorts of Nazis and fascists and the rest of their scum of humanity, obviously, and completely safe for normal people that want to speak in whatever language, by the way. There are also people who are more comfortable even speaking Russian, who want to preserve the traditions of their ancestors who were brought up by the Russian culture. The foreign minister added earlier, Russian President Vladimir Putin noted that Moscow is not against the preservation of Ukrainian statehood. So yes, I mean, from Kharkiv to Odessa should be liberated completely, obviously, and the referendum should be held there, and these regions obviously will join Russia. I have no doubts about it. Locals will be all for it. When it comes to Western Ukraine, I don't give a damn about it. Or Poland, Romania, Hungary, whoever, Slovaks, Bulgars, they can have claims on that. And let them deal with the Ukrainian Nazis and the fascists that turned that Western Ukraine into their stronghold, ideological stronghold. And when it comes to Kyiv and surrounding few regions, okay, maybe it will maintain some sort of statehood, landlocked statehood, but only in Russian sphere of interest, right? So West will stay out of that territory also. That's it. And there will be no ceasefires, by the way. Talks about the escalation may last for months, 2, 3, 5 months, maybe a year. Okay. But Russia will not take no ceasefires. Russian armed forces will continue to demilitarize, denazify Kyiv regime. And when the final agreement is reached on peace, when root causes are addressed, and when a true resolution is reached, then, okay, hostilities will end. And the Russian leader, by the way, Russian president was quite clear on the terms when Russian armed forces may consider stopping military hostilities. First of all, Kyiv regime have to withdraw forces from Russian regions, from Kherson, Zaporozhye, DPR, LPR regions, nowadays from this tiny area in the Kursk borderline, right? And after that, Moscow may, some additional steps have to be taken, obviously, by Kyiv regime, by its NATO backers, and after that, Moscow will consider that ground is good enough, some meaningful talks to begin, and Russian troops will stop military operations, but not before that. And in these principal positions, nothing has changed. TASS news agency is also reporting that, EU intends to immediately respond to the duties promised by Trump. Yesterday, by the way, during that first cabinet meeting, Trump stated that US will impose tariffs on Europe, on EU, not just on the car sales, but on everything else. That's what he said. So European Union will soon respond decisively to the US President Donald Trump's promised 25% custom duties on European goods. This is stated in a statement issued by European Commission. The European Commission will respond immediately and firmly to US customs duties, the document said. The European Commission also commented on a Trump statement that the EU was formed to use the United States to Trump actually said there that EU was formed to screw the US, right? So anyways, European Commission also commented on a Trump statement that the EU was formed to use the United States, and it has successfully done this. Brussels has claimed that the European Union is the biggest market in the world, which has become a great success for the United States. Oh, really? Biggest market in the world. What about China, though? What about China? And I don't think EU market is bigger than US market, even combined, man. Definitely not in PPP index, right? I don't know numbers at this point, but EU is a joke, man. EU is a joke, and I don't know what they hope for in Brussels while threatening US, but do they have any chances? And dear friends, quite a long update. It's 50 minutes now, but hopefully you will find this video informative, interesting, and useful. And if so, please click that like button, leave some commentary, and share video with your friends. And if you can, please share information about my channel video with your friends in real life or on internet. And well, if you like my work, if you like this small project, media project, please consider to support. All the links are on this video in the description box and in the pinned comment. This is it for now. Sorry that I forget to monitor time, and the update is longer than I was anticipating. Like set 35 minutes should be optimal, but yet again, hopefully you will find video interesting. Have a wonderful day and take care.